My girlfriend said to me with complete coldness, "Your family's problems are none of my concern." When my brother was on the verge of ending up on the street, I accepted those words without arguing. However, when it was her sister who ended up getting arrested, I applied the exact same logic she had thrown at me. Now she calls me heartless while begging for help she will never get from me. My name is Daniel. I'm 32 years old and I live in Arizona. 10 years ago, I started out as a construction laborer, earning barely $15 an hour. Through effort, consistency, and endless workdays, I worked my way up to leading entire teams on major commercial projects. Today, I earn around $135,000 a year. It sounds like a lot, but in reality it's only fair for the level of responsibility I carry every day. I coordinate more than 20 workers, deal with architects and city inspectors, and ensure projects are delivered on time and within budget. It's a stressful job, but I'm good at it. 3 years ago, I bought my house, taking advantage of a brief dip in the housing market. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home with a double garage and a decent backyard. I paid $385,000 for it, which seemed expensive at the time, but similar houses now sell for around $500,000. The mortgage, including taxes and insurance, is $2,950 per month. It's manageable on my salary, though still a significant expense. I've been with my girlfriend, Aisley, for almost 3 years. I met her on Bumble, where she presented herself as a social media consultant and lifestyle influencer. The reality was quite different. She had barely 4,000 followers on Instagram and occasionally received free products, like supplements or teeth whitening kits, in exchange for posting photos. In total, she earned no more than $300 a month. She moved in with me about 10 months ago, right when her lease ended, and she claimed she couldn't afford the rent increase from $1,200 to $1,600. She called it exploitation for someone who was building her business. I offered to let her stay at my place temporarily, but without realizing it, temporary became permanent. That's when I should have noticed the red flags. Aisley constantly talks about financial independence and having clear boundaries in relationships, but those rules never seem to apply when she was the one benefiting. She contributes $450 a month as her fair share, while I pay a $2,950 mortgage. Utilities alone run close to $300 extra during the summer. Groceries cost between $600 and $800 a month, depending on how often we eat out. On top of that are insurance, taxes, maintenance, internet, and every streaming platform imaginable. According to her, everything is balanced because she covers her share, her car payment, and her phone bill. She repeats it constantly, as if it were a huge sacrifice. Meanwhile, I cover absolutely everything else: utilities, food, household supplies, outings, and trips. Last year, I even paid nearly $4,500 for a vacation to Hawaii that she proudly showcased on social media as living my best life, without ever mentioning who paid for it. Aisley loves to lecture about not supporting toxic family dynamics and speaks as if she were an expert in psychology, despite having dropped out of community college after 2 semesters because classes were too early and interfered with her content creation. Her favorite phrase, repeated at least 5 times a day while scrolling TikTok on the $2,200 couch I'm still paying off, is, "That's not my circus, not my monkeys." The most ironic part is that she comes from a wealthy family. Her father owns 4 car dealerships in Phoenix, and her mother has never worked. For her 26th birthday, they gave her a brand new Lexus worth about $40,000. They still pay for her health insurance, car insurance, phone plan, and send her money whenever she runs short. Yet she feels entitled to lecture others about self-sufficiency. That disconnect from her own reality was, in a way, impressive. My family background is completely different. My father died when I was 20 from a massive heart attack at 48, working under unbearable heat in construction. He had no life insurance and no savings. My mother struggled financially for years until she remarried a good man named Esteban. However, he had children from his first marriage, each with their own financial problems, such as student loans and medical debt. My younger brother, Connor, is 25 and also works in construction, just like I did when I started out. He is incredibly hard-working and never complains. Even after spending 12 hours under the sun, he earns around $5,000 a year, just enough to survive. His goal is to save $8,000 to train as a heavy machinery operator and increase his income, but saving that amount while living paycheck to paycheck is nearly impossible. Connor has always been very proud and avoids asking for help. That's why when he called me a couple of months ago, on a Tuesday at 9 in the evening, I immediately knew something was seriously wrong. I was watching one of those ridiculous reality shows with Aisley when my phone rang. My brother's voice was unrecognizable, defeated, shaky, filled with apologies for bothering me with his problems. In that moment, I understood that the situation was truly serious. It all started when Ryan, his roommate, decided to leave from one day to the next. He gave barely a week's notice and moved across the country with a girl he had been dating for only 6 weeks. He packed his things into a moving truck and vanished, leaving my brother stuck with a $1,750 monthly rent for a 2-bedroom apartment. He didn't look for a replacement or offer any financial help. He simply left. Connor had to cover the full rent for 4 months, burning through all his savings and even selling his motorcycle, which had taken him 2 years of sacrifice to buy. He got $6,000 for it, but the money disappeared quickly paying overdue rent. The landlord, fed up with the situation, gave him until Friday to come up with $5,250 in back rent plus the next month in advance, or face a formal eviction that would ruin his credit for years. My brother was genuinely terrified at the thought of ending up on the street. He tried to find a cheaper place, but anywhere halfway decent required a security deposit, first month's rent, and last month's rent, easily totaling $4,000 or even $5,000. After months of paying the rent on his own, he simply didn't have that kind of money. The few options he could afford were in dangerous neighborhoods or run-down apartments with broken appliances and serious moisture problems. Desperate, he called me to ask for a $6,000 loan, enough to catch up on rent and move somewhere more affordable. He also asked if he could stay for a couple of months in the guest room until he got back on his feet. He promised to pay me back when he could and even offered to help with repairs and chores around the house. I didn't hesitate for a second. He's my brother, and that money was sitting in my savings account earning practically no interest. Besides, the guest room was filled with workout equipment I never used and old boxes I'd been meaning to donate anyway. Honestly, having Connor in the house even sounded nice to me. He's tidy, quiet, respectful, and always willing to help. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, I told my girlfriend, Aisley, about the situation. I thought it would be an easy conversation, since she knew Connor well from family gatherings and they had always gotten along. He's polite and likable, so I didn't see where the problem could be. Her reaction, however, left me frozen. Absolutely not, she said firmly, without taking her eyes off her skincare routine, one that cost more than many people's entire monthly grocery budget. I stared at her in disbelief through the mirror. What do you mean, no? I asked. That means Connor is not moving in here, and you're definitely not giving him $6,000 of our money, she replied coldly. I explained that it was my house and my money, earned through my own work. She turned to look at me as if I were naive. I don't want to live with your brother, and I don't want you throwing money away on his bad decisions. That doesn't help him. It just enables him. I told her Connor hadn't made any bad decisions. His roommate had abandoned him and violated the lease. She insisted he should have anticipated something like this with a larger emergency fund and that renting an apartment he couldn't afford on his own was a poor choice from the start. We argued. I repeated that his planning had been reasonable. Sharing an apartment with someone who signed a legal contract is completely normal. To her, there were no excuses. According to Aisley, responsible adults prepare for worst-case scenarios. I'm not going to watch you throw away $6,000 you're never going to get back. I replied that even if I never saw a single dollar again, he was still my brother and family helps family. That's when she said what she really meant. Your family's financial problems are not my responsibility, Daniel, and honestly, they shouldn't be yours either. I reminded her that Connor only wanted to use the guest room and that it wouldn't affect our lives at all. She shook her head. She said she would have to deal with his stress, his debt, and his drama. This house is my sanctuary, my place of peace, and I'm not going to let it be filled with other people's problems. The irony was that I paid for that sanctuary with $2,950 a month, while she contributed barely $450. Aisley went on to suggest that if I really wanted to help my brother, I could pay for a few nights at a cheap motel or rent him a storage unit for his things. But he was not moving in here, and I was not taking money out of my savings. I asked her what would happen if I decided to help him anyway. She looked at me coldly and said, "Then you'd be choosing your brother's problems over our relationship. Maybe we need to reconsider whether we truly share the same values for a future together." In that moment, I understood exactly what was happening. My partner of 3 years was threatening to end our relationship simply because I didn't want my brother to become homeless. She, who lived in my house paying almost nothing, drove a car bought by her wealthy parents, and had her health insurance paid for by them, was lecturing me about financial responsibility while placing conditions on helping my own family. I watched her for a long moment, realizing who she really was when an uncomfortable situation threatened her comfort. Finally, I replied calmly, "You're right, Aisley. Connor's problems aren't your responsibility." The moment she heard that, her face lit up. She leaned in to kiss me on the cheek, visibly relieved. "I knew you'd understand once you looked at it logically and practically. That's one of the things I love most about you. You never let emotions cloud your judgment when making important decisions." The next morning, while Aisley was at her yoga class, a $100 monthly course that I paid for, I called my bank and transferred $6,500 to Connor's account. Then I called him and told him he could come over that same afternoon with his things and move into the guest room whenever he wanted. When Aisley came back around noon and saw Connor's truck parked in the driveway, loaded with boxes and furniture, she exploded. "We agreed he wasn't moving in here, didn't we?" I replied calmly. "What you said was that his problems weren't your responsibility, and you were right. So I handled it, because it's my problem to solve. This is my home too. I live here. Actually, this is my home. I bought it and I pay for it. You contribute $450 a month to sleep here, but that doesn't give you the right to veto my decisions. You can't make decisions this big without consulting me first. And why would I need to consult you about my family and my money? You made it clear that Connor was my responsibility, so I handled it the way I saw fit." Aisley stormed upstairs and slammed the bedroom door so hard I was worried she might damage the frame. Connor looked at me with raised eyebrows, as if to say, "Man, what kind of mess did I just walk into?" "Don't worry about her drama," I told him as I helped unload the truck. "Her opinion doesn't carry weight here. It's not her house, and it's not her money." Over the next 2.5 weeks, Aisley made everyone's life miserable through a passive-aggressive psychological warfare campaign. She constantly made pointed comments about people who don't respect boundaries in relationships or who make others feel uncomfortable in their own homes, always making sure Connor could hear. Additionally, Aisley began spending much more time away from the house. She would disappear from early morning until late at night and even stayed overnight 3 times at a friend's apartment, while proudly posting on social media that she needed space to think. Connor felt guilty about the obvious tension his presence was causing and, on several occasions, offered to leave and find somewhere else to stay. I told him to ignore the theatrical behavior. He was my family, and he had every right to stay for as long as he needed. I wasn't going to allow Aisley to manipulate the situation through emotional blackmail. Ironically, having Connor in the house turned out to be an excellent thing. He woke up every day at 5 in the morning to go to construction sites. He kept the common areas cleaner than they had ever been and was always eager to help with unfinished projects. He fixed the garbage disposal, painted the guest bathroom, and even helped me install new ceiling fans in 2 rooms. On top of that, it was genuinely nice to have a family member around to watch sports, play video games, or simply hang out without the constant tension of having to tiptoe around Aisley's mood swings. She, on the other hand, behaved as if Connor's mere presence were a personal attack on her lifestyle. She complained that she could no longer relax in her own space and that some people didn't understand what healthy boundaries in a relationship were. A curious attitude coming from someone who claimed to be an expert in psychology and personal development. After 3 weeks of searching, Connor found a decent one-bedroom apartment and was ready to move out. Even so, I insisted that he not rush into settling for something worse. The guest room was his for as long as he needed it. To be honest, I enjoyed his company far more than Aisley's constant scenes and emotional manipulation. 3.5 weeks after Connor moved in with me, life decided to test Aisley's famous boundaries philosophy in the most ironic way possible. It was Wednesday, close to midnight, when her phone started ringing and vibrating non-stop for nearly 10 minutes. It was a flood of calls and messages from her older sister, Kelsey, 30 years old, who, judging by what we could hear, was in a state of absolute hysteria. Kelsey had gone out with friends to a trendy downtown restaurant. On the drive back, she decided to keep texting while driving. She ended up crashing into a parked Toyota Camry, causing significant damage to both vehicles. Instead of stopping and exchanging information like any responsible adult, she panicked over the insurance consequences and fled the scene as fast as she could. Unfortunately for her, a neighbor from the building across the street witnessed everything, wrote down the license plate number, and called the police with a detailed description of the car and the accident. 2 hours later, officers located her at her apartment and arrested her for leaving the scene of an accident involving property damage. In Arizona, that charge is serious, especially when there is a reliable witness. It's not just a ticket, it's a criminal offense that can involve jail time, heavy fines, license suspension, and a permanent criminal record. Kelsey was taken straight to the Maricopa County Jail and now desperately needed money for bail before her first court appearance. Aisley jumped out of bed in a panic, getting dressed in a hurry while searching for her car keys. "We have to go bail her out immediately. She can't stay in jail all night," she exclaimed anxiously. I stayed lying in bed, watching her rush around. "We?" I asked calmly. "Yes, us. We have to go now. She needs us." I looked at her silently for a few seconds, then finally said the words I had been waiting weeks to say. "Your family's financial problems are not my responsibility." She froze instantly, as if someone had pressed the pause button. Slowly, she turned toward me and looked at me as if I were suddenly speaking a foreign language or had lost my mind. "Are you seriously going to repeat my own words right now, in the middle of a family emergency?" "I'm not repeating anything," I replied calmly. "I'm simply applying the same boundaries philosophy you defended. Kelsey's bad decisions and illegal behavior are not my problem to fix. She's in jail." Meanwhile, Connor was about to be homeless and sleeping in his car. "When I asked for your support, you told me it wasn't your concern. I'm just respecting the boundaries you set." "This has nothing to do with Connor," she shouted. "And how is it different, exactly?" I replied. Connor needed help, and his situation wasn't even caused by breaking the law. Kelsey chose to text while driving and, worse, fled the scene after an accident. If anyone is fully responsible for what she's facing, it's her. Aisley stood there speechless for several seconds, processing what it meant to have her own logic used against her. Finally, she exploded, accusing me of being spiteful and cruel while her sister sat in jail. She accused me of having no heart during what she considered a real family emergency. "I'm not being spiteful," I answered calmly. "I'm being consistent with the principles you imposed. Your family, your problem, your money. Besides, as far as I know, bail bondsmen accept credit cards." After hurling every insult she could think of at me, she stormed out in the middle of the night. She came back around 7 in the morning, exhausted and visibly shaken. She had found out that Kelsey's bail was set at $18,000, which meant she had to pay at least $1,800 in cash to the bail bondsman, plus provide collateral. That money came straight out of her savings, the same savings she had been building for some time to start a personal project. After that, Aisley gave me the silent treatment for 4 full days. Far from bothering me, I enjoyed it. The house was peaceful and quiet, and Connor and I were able to catch up watching shows and games without constant judgment about our life choices. However, when Kelsey's court date was finally set, reality hit the entire family hard. This was no longer a simple traffic violation that could be resolved with a defensive driving course. It was a hit-and-run case involving property damage and an eyewitness. That meant a very real possibility of jail time, a suspended license, heavy fines, restitution payments, and almost certainly the immediate cancellation of her insurance policy, branding her as a high-risk driver. It was obvious that Kelsey would need a real criminal defense attorney, not an overworked public defender who could barely glance at the case file minutes before walking into the courtroom. Attorneys of that caliber typically cost between $15,000 and $25,000, depending on how aggressive the defense needed to be. On Thursday night, Aisley tried a completely different approach. She cooked my favorite dinner, grilled chicken with garlic mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables, and even uncorked an expensive bottle of wine she'd been saving for a special occasion. That should have been my first warning sign, because normally she barely reheated leftovers in the microwave. "Baby, I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other night," she began, using her sweetest, most calculated voice as she poured the wine. "Oh really? And what kind of thoughts?" I asked, curious. I admit I was unfair and harsh about Connor when he needed help. I was wrong. But Kelsey's situation is different. Her case is really serious. She could go to prison for several months. "Connor was about to be homeless, and you still said it wasn't our problem," I reminded her. "So where exactly is this money supposed to come from now?" "I see things differently now. In a real crisis, family supports each other." "I completely agree," I replied. "That's why Connor lives here rent-free, and why I gave him the money he needed without expecting it back. That's supporting family. My family. But Kelsey isn't my family, Aisley. And honestly, neither are you, at least not legally. We're just dating, with no formal commitment." My words hit her like an invisible slap. She fell silent, trying to process what that meant for our relationship. Finally, in a trembling voice, she asked, "So you won't help her at all, knowing she could go to prison?" "Your family's financial problems are not my responsibility," I replied, repeating her exact words from when Connor needed help. Over the next 10 days, they tried every possible tactic to manipulate me. First, Kelsey called me directly, crying and apologizing between sobs, swearing she had learned her lesson about distracted driving. Then Aisley's mother called to remind me how much they had always liked me, trying to make me feel like part of the family. Even her father wanted to talk to me, man to man, telling me that real men take care of family and stand together during hard times. My response was always the same, word for word: "Your family's financial problems are not my responsibility." While all of this was happening, ironically, Connor was thriving. He had found an excellent studio apartment in a safe neighborhood for $900 a month and planned to move in by the end of that same month. On top of that, he had been accepted into a heavy machinery operator training program that would start in 6 weeks. He looked happier, more confident, and more optimistic than I had seen him in a long time. In the end, success tends to attract more success. Meanwhile, Kelsey's legal situation continued to deteriorate as more details emerged. She missed several days of work due to hearings and lawyer consultations, and her boss began asking uncomfortable questions about the criminal charges. The damage to the other vehicle turned out to be far greater than initially estimated, and the owner was pressuring prosecutors to seek maximum penalties, including possible jail time. Aisley's parents had already sold some investments and cashed out a certificate of deposit to raise money, but they were still short $8,000 to hire a specialized criminal defense attorney, someone capable of negotiating a deal without jail time and with minimal license suspension. That's when they planned a family intervention with the clear intention of pressuring me to cover the difference. They invited me to dinner on a Sunday, which didn't seem strange since we had done that many times before. However, when I arrived, I found Kelsey sitting at the kitchen table, crying, surrounded by legal documents and bills carefully laid out to create maximum emotional impact. Aisley's father spoke first, his tone solemn. "We need to have a serious conversation about this family crisis." They explained that they had already raised $12,000 by selling part of their retirement savings and some of Aisley's mother's jewelry, but that they desperately needed another $8,000. They wanted me to provide it, calling it a family investment that would supposedly benefit everyone. Aisley's mother chimed in through tears. Kelsey is a good person who made a mistake. This could happen to anyone. She doesn't deserve to have her life ruined over this. I nodded calmly. I agree she made a serious mistake, but it's not my responsibility to fix it. Aisley reacted almost desperately. You have that money saved. That amount wouldn't affect your savings. You refused to help Connor with the $6,000 he needed through no fault of his own, saying it would be throwing money away, I replied. And now you want me to help Kelsey with $8,000, after she chose to text while driving and then fled the scene? Which situation is actually worse? Her father tried to appeal to some sense of male solidarity. I know Aisley handled the Connor situation poorly, but when family faces serious trouble, we support each other. That's what separates us from strangers. Connor is my family, and I helped him in every way I could. Kelsey is not, I said firmly. You've been with Aisley for almost 3 years. You're practically part of this family. Aisley made it very clear that time in a relationship does not create family obligations, I replied. When my brother was about to be homeless, you all said it wasn't your problem. Aisley, choking back tears, begged. I know I made a huge mistake, but I'm desperate and terrified. I'll pay you back every cent, with interest. With what income? I asked coldly. There's a very real chance you'll lose your job once your criminal record comes to light. After that, the atmosphere became unbearable. Dinner continued in tense silence, and during the drive home, Aisley barely spoke to me. I could tell that in her mind, she was already planning the next strategy to manipulate me. Things completely fell apart for Kelsey over the following 3 weeks. She was ultimately found guilty of the hit-and-run charges. She received a 6-month license suspension, 200 hours of community service, and 3 years of probation with monthly check-ins, along with thousands of dollars in fines and restitution payments. She avoided jail, which, honestly, was pure luck on her part. Even so, she lost her job when the company discovered the conviction during a background check. With no income, she could no longer afford the $2,200 monthly rent on her luxury downtown apartment, filled with modern amenities. She had to break the lease, pay penalties, and move her designer furniture into an expensive storage unit, since her childhood bedroom didn't have enough space. That was when, ironically, fate began to do its work. Aisley's parents, already financially drained after paying bail and legal fees, now had to fully support Kelsey while she searched for work with a criminal record. Her father began hinting that Aisley might also need to move back home to help with expenses. Suddenly, Aisley was facing the loss of the comfortable life she had with me, paying only $450 in rent for a house whose real monthly cost was $2,950, plus utilities, food, subscriptions, and vacations that I covered without her contributing anything. She would be sharing a bathroom again with her emotionally unstable sister and listening to Kelsey complain about her problems all day long. One night, while we were watching TV, Aisley cautiously suggested that maybe we could help Kelsey with some money. Not the full $8,000, she clarified, but perhaps $3,000 or $4,000 to help her get started. Your family's financial problems are not my responsibility, I replied without taking my eyes off the screen. Come on, Daniel, don't be like that. Can't you show a little compassion? I'm doing exactly what you taught me when your brother needed help. I admit I was wrong back then. Can't you be the more mature one now and let it go? The more mature one? I reminded her. You threatened to end our relationship just because I wanted to help my brother when he was facing homelessness. And now you expect me to bail out your sister, who committed a hit and run. Aisley insisted that Kelsey had learned her lesson and felt terrible about what happened. Yet just one day earlier, I had seen her post Instagram stories saying that everything happens for a reason and that the universe was testing her. That didn't sound like someone taking responsibility for her actions. The situation reached a breaking point when, the previous week, Aisley's parents decided to give her a reality check. They could no longer support 2 adult daughters while trying to plan for retirement. They gave her 2 options: move back home immediately, get a stable job, and contribute to household expenses, or figure out how to support herself entirely without any financial help. That's when the desperate pleading began, and honestly, it was both pathetic and revealing to watch her face the consequences of her own selfish philosophy. Aisley offered to pay more rent, increasing her contribution from $450 to $800 a month. She promised to get what she called a real job, with steady income, instead of continuing to chase her influencer fantasy that barely made any money. She said she would take care of all the cleaning and cooking in the house. She even proposed setting up a detailed payment plan to gradually help Kelsey with her legal expenses. "I'll do absolutely anything you want," she said through tears. "Please, just don't make me move back in with my parents and deal with Kelsey's constant drama again." "I'm not forcing you to do anything," I replied. "I'm simply not going to solve your family's financial problems, just like you taught me." Crying, she tried to appeal to my emotions. "But I do love you. This relationship is everything to me. What you love is my house, my stable income, and the comfortable life I provide," I said. "That's not the same as loving a person." She claimed that wasn't true. So I calmly asked her when the last time was that she paid for dinner, bought groceries, or even filled her gas tank without using my credit card. She had no answer, because we both knew the truth. I had been fully supporting her lifestyle for almost a year while she contributed virtually nothing. "Your parents taught you that love is conditional, that helping others is optional when it benefits you," I concluded. "Now you get to live under those same conditions." Meanwhile, Connor had moved into his own apartment the previous weekend with my support. He was thriving in every sense. He had been promoted to crew leader with a significant raise, had started a heavy machinery training program, and had even begun dating someone from his class. Before leaving, he thanked me for standing by him when no one else did. "You didn't just help me financially," he told me as he loaded his truck. "You showed me what real family loyalty looks like. I'll never forget that." 3 days later, Aisley moved back into her parents' house, taking her designer clothes and her entire makeup collection with her. Before the moving truck arrived, she made one last desperate attempt. "I know I was wrong about Connor and how I handled that situation. Are you really going to end everything we have over this?" "I'm not ending anything," I replied. "Your family's problems create chaos that I don't want in my space." I threw her own words back at her from months earlier and watched as she realized I was using her exact logic against her. "Are you really using my own words against me?" she asked in disbelief. "I'm just being consistent with the boundaries you set in this relationship. If that feels cruel to you, maybe you should think about what it said about your original stance when my brother needed help." I watched her load her designer clothes into the Lexus her wealthy parents had bought her, and I remembered what Connor had told me. People only learn when they discover that their actions have real consequences. Today, Aisley and Kelsey are back living at their parents' house, almost as if they've been sent back to adolescence. Kelsey is scraping by with a job at Target that barely pays $15 an hour, trying to rebuild the remains of a life her own mistake destroyed. Her conviction left a permanent mark that abruptly shut down any chance of a stable career. Aisley, meanwhile, spends her hours sitting at a desk at her father's car dealership, entering data for minimum wage. Ironically, even after returning to the same bedroom she slept in at 15, she can't stop posting on Instagram about new beginnings, personal growth, and chapters that strengthen the soul. In reality, the only thing that changed was the backdrop, the childish wallpaper in her room and the mirror in front of which she now practices fake smiles for her stories. Meanwhile, I've moved on with my life in peace. No shouting, no begging in my living room, and no dead weight from someone who only wanted what she could get from me. With Noor, on the other hand, everything moves forward steadily. He grows more every day. I can't help but smile when I think that, in the end, life gave each of them exactly what they defended so fiercely, their own rules. Next story. My mother slept with a colleague and left my father because, according to her, she was bored. He let her go in silence, and I watched as her perfect world collapsed without him trying to stop it. I was 19, studying architecture, and had come home for spring break. Sometimes I think it would have been better to stay at the university than to face what I discovered just 3 days ago. My father, Ernan, is a forensic accountant. For those who don't know what that means, he's the specialist companies hire when they suspect theft or fraud. His job is to follow the money trail criminals think they've hidden. It's not a glamorous profession, but it requires precision, discipline, and patience, qualities he has in abundance. He also works for a government agency, earns well, and has an almost supernatural ability to detect lies. My mother, Claudia, organizes events for a luxury hotel chain. She plans corporate galas where executives mingle over champagne glasses that cost more than a month's rent. She's good at what she does because she's charming, attractive, and knows how to make wealthy people feel important. The problem is that, at some point, she started believing too much in the character she was playing. 3 days ago, I came back earlier than expected. She was in the kitchen, her iPad propped against the coffee maker, in the middle of a video call. I heard the male voice before I saw the screen. A man with a strong accent was telling her he couldn't stand how badly he wanted to taste her again. Yes, that kind of conversation. When she heard me come in, she turned abruptly. I'll never forget her expression. There was no shame or guilt, just annoyance, as if I had interrupted something important. "You were supposed to arrive tomorrow," she said, as if the problem were my schedule. The man on the call, who I later learned was named Rodolfo, didn't even hang up. He laughed and made a comment about meeting the daughter. Mom closed the iPad, and we stood there in silence for a few seconds. I could only ask if Dad knew. She rolled her eyes. "Your father knows exactly what he wants to know." I couldn't take it anymore and went straight to my dad's office downtown. I found him reviewing spreadsheets with those glasses he never admits he needs. When I told him what I'd seen, he didn't get upset. He didn't yell. He didn't even seem surprised. "Rodolfo Bulip," he said, removing his glasses to clean them. "Wine distributor. Supplier for the chain your mother works for. They've been seeing each other for 4 months. He said it with a coldness that hit harder than any scream. "You knew?" I asked. "I suspected it 3 months ago. Confirmed it 6 weeks ago. Your mother has never been good with technology. Her phone syncs with our shared iPad." "And you didn't do anything? You didn't confront her? Fight for someone who doesn't want to be rescued?" "No. I focused on documenting everything. I've already spoken with lawyers and I'm separating my finances. Your college fund is protected. It was the first thing I secured." That's my father. While my mother behaved like a teenager infatuated with her new toy, he worked silently to protect our future. While she told her friends that Hernan had become boring, he made sure her betrayal wouldn't destroy what he had built. That same night, he came home with boxes and started packing his things from the study. No drama, no shouting, just order. Mom showed up dressed for another work event and saw him. "What are you doing?" "Moving my things into the guest room. I'm filing tomorrow." She let out a dismissive laugh. "For Rodolfo? Please, Hernan, grow up. It's just intimacy, something you never understood." Dad looked at her steadily. "No, Claudia. It's not just intimacy. It's 4 months of lies. $800 at Bernardine when you were supposedly at a conference in Boston. 3 trips to Miami that your hotel neither authorized nor paid for. 27 calls to a number registered to Rodolfo's apartment, saved in your phone as Nata's Yoga. Want me to keep going?" The color drained from her face. "You checked my records?" "Our records. Joint accounts, joint cards. All legal. Your lawyer will explain it to you." She tried to turn things around, saying this only proved how cold and calculating he was, that he'd turned their marriage into a spreadsheet, and that's why she needed someone like Rodolfo, someone who made her feel alive. Dad's response was flawless. "You're right. I reduce everything to data. Here's some on your boyfriend. 2 divorces due to infidelity, gambling debts close to $90,000, 2 lawsuits for breach of contract, and currently sleeping with at least 2 women in your industry. But sure, you're different. You're special." She stormed out. Dad kept packing. That was 3 days ago. Since then, Mom has been staying at Rodolfo's apartment, posting Instagram stories about wine tastings and sunsets, as if she were living inside a romance novel. Meanwhile, friends and acquaintances keep asking me if my parents are okay, because she's acting like a late-blooming teenager. Dad, on the other hand, has already filed the divorce papers. He goes to work, to the gym, cooks at home. He seems lighter, as if a weight has been lifted. Yesterday he made his famous mushroom risotto, the one Mom always criticized for being too heavy. We ate in silence until he said, "I know this is hard for you. I'm sorry you had to see it. Don't apologize for what she chose." Then he smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in months. The irony is that she always said he was boring, that he saw life like a spreadsheet. But spreadsheets don't lie or deceive. They don't turn a wine tasting into something more important than 17 years of marriage. Spreadsheets only show the truth, if you know how to read it. I decided to stay with my father for the rest of the vacation. Mom has sent me more than 15 messages, all variations of the same script. "You don't understand, we need to talk, this is between your father and me." What she doesn't understand is that when you destroy your family over a whim and a few expensive dinners, you lose the right to control the narrative. Dad says the divorce will be straightforward. It's a no-fault state, the assets will be split evenly. She'll receive 50%, which feels unfair to me. He just shrugs and says, "It's just money. I can make more." That's the difference between them. Mom thought she was trading something for something better. Dad always knew it isn't about trading, it's about building. While she was busy swapping, he was documenting. While she drowned in her affair, he protected what truly mattered. Now she's about to learn the difference between a man who seems boring and one who is, in reality, indestructible. Update. 2 months later, many people asked what happened, so here it is. Brace yourselves, because it's borderline pathetic. My mother presents herself on social media as if she's living her best life. Her Instagram looks like a midlife crisis handbook: champagne brunches, spa days, trips, and selfies with Rodolfo, who almost never looks at the camera. She proudly posted that she'd been promoted to regional director of events, pairing the announcement with quotes about honoring your own path and starting new chapters. Her friends flooded the post with fire emojis and "Queen" comments. What's ironic is that Rodolfo got her that promotion. It wasn't her achievement. I heard him bragging about it out loud in a restaurant while I was there with friends. From the bar, he boasted to another woman about how he controls the city's hotel industry. "It took 3 phone calls to get my latest conquest promoted," he said. Yes, he called my mother my latest conquest. Meanwhile, my father, Hernan, moved into a downtown apartment. Nothing fancy, just a modest 2-room place near his office. On moving day, Mom put on a performance, pretending she was perfectly fine. She even brought Rodolfo along. While Dad was carrying boxes, Rodolfo tried to shake his hand. Hernan looked him straight in the eye, glanced at the outstretched hand, and kept going. Rodolfo turned red and muttered something in Russian. Dad replied in flawless Russian, which made him step back. Later, Dad told me what he'd said, that he knew about Rodolfo's gambling debt to the mafia, and that protection wouldn't last forever. Turns out he'd been secretly studying Russian for 2 years. Mom never knew. She was too busy with events, spin classes, and, apparently, Rodolfo's whims. The divorce is progressing. Mom tried to accuse Dad of hiding income from consulting work. Her lawyer submitted 3 years of spotless tax returns. Then that same lawyer confronted her about $1,000 in cash deposits made over 6 months. She couldn't explain them. They were almost certainly gifts from Rodolfo, but admitting that would reveal when the relationship really began. At the same time, Dad's consulting work took off. He uncovered a multi-million-dollar fraud at a medical supplies company, preventing massive losses. That led to referrals from other firms. In just 2 months, he earned more than he had in half a year at his government job. Still, he has no plans to quit. He values the stability and benefits, but now he's also building something of his own. When Mom heard about his success through third parties, she started messaging him about reconciliation, couples therapy, and thinking about the family. Dad saved every screenshot and handed them to his lawyer. Last week, she called me crying, not to apologize, but to complain about how hard her life had become. Through sobs, she said Rodolfo didn't understand her and that Hernan was destroying her with the divorce. I calmly replied, "The only thing he's doing is divorcing you. That's what happens when you choose someone else." She said no one understands what it's like to be married to someone who treats you like a roommate. Really? The man who cooked every Sunday, never missed one of her work events, and even learned Russian for 2 years to surprise her on an anniversary trip? She went quiet. "Yes, Russian," I said. "But tell me more about how he didn't care about you." And I hung up. Best of all, I've documented everything too. Every post where she wears jewelry Dad never gave her, every location that contradicts her stories, every photo of Rodolfo's other women. Because what my mother doesn't know is that he has another girlfriend, Fiorella, 26, an employee at a rival hotel chain. She posts photos at the same restaurants and wine bars. Once, Mom posted from Bernardine at 7 in the evening, candles on the table. That same night, Fiorella posted from a private lounge in the same place at 10. In both photos, the same flashy gold watch gleamed on Rodolfo's wrist. I haven't told Mom yet. I'm saving the evidence. Dad insists I let it go, that revenge drains energy. But this isn't revenge. It's accounting, balancing the books. Besides, he's already moved on. Next week he has a date with a woman from his gym, Mariana, a 38-year-old federal prosecutor who runs marathons and, according to him, even laughs at his spreadsheet jokes. He said it like it was nothing, but I caught him trying on new shirts and paying attention to his appearance in a way he hadn't in years. Mom, on the other hand, calls me more and more often. Always after 9 at night, her voice slurred with alcohol. She complains that Rodolfo needs space, that the promotion wasn't what she expected, that there's more work and less recognition, and that her friends have drifted away. Of course they have. Everyone knows she destroyed her marriage for a man who collects women like wine bottles. Everyone sees the desperate Instagram attempts to project happiness. Everyone understands that the regional director title came at a cost, becoming just another piece in Rodolfo's collection. The irony is that my father is happier than ever. Not vengeful happiness, real peace. He's reading again, playing tennis, and even sent me a photo from a sunrise hike. He looked 10 years younger. Mom chose chaos disguised as passion. Dad chose peace disguised as routine. And the answer is obvious. Who won? Update. 6 months later. Remember when I said I was documenting everything? Well, life granted me a front row seat to witness one of the most spectacular downfalls I've ever seen. Last night was the annual hospitality gala, the big event where hotels, suppliers, and executives gather to fake politeness while ruthlessly competing behind smiles. My mother attended as regional director of events, and Rodolfo was there as a featured supplier. I was also there, thanks to a professor who managed to get me an invitation. She didn't know I'd be present. She looked flawless, a dress that probably cost more than her monthly contribution to my education, perfect hair, professional makeup. She stood beside Rodolfo as if they were the industry's power couple of the moment. He, however, didn't seem interested in keeping up that image. Around 10 p.m., Fiorella arrived. 26 years old, wearing a dress that made my mother's look outdated. She walked straight up to Rodolfo, not to both of them, just to him. She kissed him on the mouth and placed her hand on his chest, openly marking her territory without the slightest shame. My mother's face cycled through every possible emotion in seconds: confusion, shock, rage, and humiliation. "Who the hell is this?" she demanded furiously. Rodolfo laughed. Literally laughed in her face. "Claudia, meet Fiorella. You two have a lot in common." Fiorella smiled, showing all her teeth. "Oh, I know exactly who she is," she said. "The one walking around thinking she's special." My mother tried to keep her composure. "Rodolfo, what is this supposed to mean?" He stepped back, adjusting his cufflinks, savoring every second of her humiliation. "This, Claudia, is reality. Did you really think what we had was love? You left your husband for good wine and good intimacy. I gave you both. You even got your promotion because I made a phone call, but I make 30 calls like that every day. Did you honestly think that made you unique? You're not special. Just another bored housewife who confused attention with affection. At least Fiorella knows exactly what this is. The blow was instant. My mother slapped him across the face in front of more than 300 people dressed in evening wear. It looked like a scene straight out of a soap opera. Security intervened immediately, as did her boss, while absolutely everyone recorded it on their phones. You're a bastard, she screamed. No, sweetheart, Rodolfo replied coldly. You're the one who destroyed your marriage. I was just the excuse. She was escorted out. She wasn't fired that same night, but the damage was already done. The video went viral within the hospitality industry in less than an hour, and by the next day it was circulating on LinkedIn. At 7 in the morning, her boss summoned her for an emergency meeting. But there was something no one knew. My father, Hernan, had also been at the gala. He was there with Mariana, invited as the keynote speaker to talk about financial crimes in the hotel industry. They saw everything. As my mother was being escorted out, she locked eyes with my father. He raised his champagne glass in a small toast, then calmly returned to his conversation. Later, I approached him and asked, "Did you know this would happen?" He looked at me with the same calm he had shown the day I told him about the affair. I knew Rodolfo would come with company. Mariana is handling his money laundering case. He likes to show off at these events. He thinks he's untouchable. I froze. What? Mariana smiled. Your father's forensic work on that medical supply company led us to something bigger. Rodolfo is laundering money through wine imports. The case is already underway. Does my mom know? I asked. She will, Mariana replied. Discovery begins next month. Her name appears on several receipts we're investigating. When I got home, I checked my mother's Instagram. She had deleted all the photos from the gala and removed her relationship status. The comments on her remaining posts were brutal. Those who had seen the video showed no mercy. At 2 in the morning, she called me, drunk and crying. Your father planned all of this. He did this to me. No, Mom, I replied coldly. Dad didn't force you to sleep with Rodolfo. He didn't make him bring another woman. And he didn't force you to slap him in front of the entire industry. You don't understand, she slurred. I understand, perfectly. You thought you were the main character in a love story, but you were just a supporting role in Rodolfo's. And now you're not even that. How can you be so cruel? I learned by watching you. She hung up, then immediately called back. I need to stay with you for a few days. I'm your mother. Were you? I replied. Now you're just the woman who destroyed our family for a man who called you a bored housewife in front of 300 people. The next morning, her boss confirmed the inevitable. She was demoted from regional director to a basic event coordinator. She wasn't fired, but it was worse. Every day she had to walk past coworkers who knew exactly how she'd gotten her promotion. My father, meanwhile, looked rejuvenated. He'd lost over 20 pounds, was happier than he'd been in years, and his consulting firm had just landed a Fortune 500 contract. He was planning a hiking trip to Patagonia with Mariana. My mother was staying at a Marriott using her employee discount. Rodolfo had blocked her number, and her friends stopped returning her calls. But the worst was yet to come. Her divorce lawyer contacted my father to renegotiate the settlement, claiming my mother's earning capacity had been damaged. My father's response was simple. She'll receive exactly what we signed. Not a cent more, not a cent less. The lawyer tried to argue emotional distress and reputational harm. My father's attorney replied with a single link, the video of the slap at the gala, accompanied by one devastating sentence. Your client's reputation is the direct consequence of her own decisions. Checkmate. 10 months later, Claudia's fall continued. She finally lost her job, this time not a demotion, but a permanent dismissal. The hotel chain restructured and eliminated anything that represented public embarrassment. The video never disappeared. Typing her name into Google still brings it up as the first result. The company kept her only long enough to avoid a wrongful termination lawsuit, then gave her just 2 weeks of severance pay. She tried to find work at other hotels, but no one wanted to hire her. Rodolfo had always been her main contact and her reference letter. Now he was facing a federal money laundering case as a result of my father's forensic work and the prosecution led by Mariana. Apparently, when wine imports are used to launder Russian money, federal authorities pay attention. My mother's name appeared in the investigation not as an accomplice, but as a naive woman who accepted gifts and trips without questioning their origin. Even so, she had to hire a criminal defense attorney with money she didn't have, just to prove she had been a useful idiot rather than a criminal. That expense drained what little savings she had left. Today she works at a Uni-Din Express hotel, not in management, but at the front desk. Night shift. At 44 years old, she checks in truck drivers and drunk businessmen at 3 in the morning. And yet, that isn't even the most painful part of her fall. After the scandal, she tried to rebuild her romantic life by creating profiles on several dating apps. But the men who appeared were exactly what you'd expect for a 44-year-old woman with a humiliating video circulating online and a Google history that screamed trouble. The first was Curtis, a divorced car salesman who invited her to dinner at a mediocre restaurant. As soon as they sat down, he asked if she was the type who got straight to the point on the first date. Just like in that video, she stood up and left before the appetizers arrived. Then came Ramon, a contractor who initially seemed decent, until she discovered he was married and looking for someone who understood the complications of his life. She ended up becoming the mistress of a married man, an irony that didn't even register with her. After that there was Kevin, who seemed more promising. He owned a small business, had never been married, and took her to real restaurants. But soon she discovered his posts on Dreddy, where he referred to her as his midlife crisis girlfriend, describing her as a trial run before finding a serious partner. Each failure pushed her deeper into the pit she had dug herself. Her Instagram shifted from showcasing luxury and perfection to being filled with motivational quotes about resilience and rising from the ashes. The woman who once flaunted champagne glasses and panoramic views now posted photos of sunsets in parking lots, paired with captions about finding beauty in the unexpected. Meanwhile, my father, Hernan, remained steady. His consulting firm secured 3 major contracts. He also began teaching forensic accounting at the university, and the IRS even tried to recruit him, an offer he declined because he values his independence. His relationship with Mariana was stable. They weren't engaged, but they were solid. They bought bicycles and signed up for a 100-kilometer charity ride. She spent almost every weekend at his place. They cooked elaborate meals together, filling the apartment with aromas that reminded me of our family dinners from before my mother decided we were no longer enough. What irritated my mother the most was that Mariana was everything she had pretended to be. Successful, sophisticated, with real connections, earned through merit and effort, not shortcuts. Mariana spoke 4 languages, had argued cases in federal court, ran marathons, and, to top it off, laughed at my father's spreadsheet jokes. When my mother learned about the relationship through mutual acquaintances, she called me crying. She said Mariana was younger, that my father was stealing her youth, that she was a federal prosecutor and therefore dangerous. She insisted the relationship wouldn't last and claimed my father didn't know how to keep a woman interested, just like with her, after 17 years of being unappreciated. The lowest point of her desperation came last month. One Friday night, just before midnight, she showed up at my father's apartment. Mariana answered the door. My father told me about it the next day. My mother tried to force her way inside, demanding to speak to her husband. Mariana calmly reminded her they were divorced and that she was trespassing. My mother began screaming, calling her a homewrecker, a grotesque irony, considering who had actually destroyed the marriage. Mariana smiled and asked, "Hernan, would you prefer I handle this legally or personally?" My father appeared, looked at her, and said just 5 words. "You need to leave now." When she refused, Mariana began calling the police without losing her composure, and my mother fled before the call even ended. But the most intense moment came 2 weeks ago. Remember Fiorella, Rodolfo's other girlfriend? She contacted me on Instagram and asked to talk. I hesitated, but curiosity won. It turned out she was pregnant with Rodolfo's child and wanted to warn me. He had gone back to my mother, not out of love, but for money. With his assets frozen, he needed someone to help him hide cash, promising they could start over if she helped him. Fiorella showed me the messages. I showed them to my father. Without hesitation, he passed them to Mariana, who immediately forwarded them to the FBI. Now my mother is under investigation, and this time not as a witness. She doesn't know it yet, but she's being monitored, bank accounts, phones, movements. If she accepts even a single dollar from Rodolfo, it's over for her. The woman who believed she was climbing toward something better is about to learn what happens when you don't know when to stop digging your own grave. I told my father I felt sorry for her. He said he wished her no harm, but he wouldn't save her from herself. He said she had everything, a stable marriage, a solid career, a family that loved her, and threw it away chasing excitement. Now she has all the excitement she wanted. He was right. My mother sought drama, passion, and adventure, and she got them in abundance. The divorce had been finalized 6 months earlier. She received half the assets but spent most of it on lawyers, an apartment she couldn't afford, and a lifestyle that no longer belonged to her. My father, on the other hand, invested his share. He bought cryptocurrency just before the last surge and tripled his capital in 3 months. Last week he showed me his portfolio. He now has more money than they ever had together. He told me, "Do you know the difference between your mother and me? She sees what she wants to see. I see what's actually there." Yesterday my mother texted me saying she needed $500 to pay rent because her paycheck wasn't enough. I didn't reply. She insisted, "Please, I'm your mother." I answered. My mother died the day she chose Rodolfo over my father. I haven't known her since. Update. 18 months later. And this really will be the last one. Not because I'm tired of telling it, but because there's nothing left of Claudia worth updating. Today she's just a warning, a story mentioned in conversations as an example of what not to do. But before closing this chapter for good, let me tell you one more story. The wedding. 3 weeks ago, my dad and Mariana got married. It was a small ceremony, about 50 people, held at dawn on a mountain trail. We climbed with flashlights in complete darkness and reached the summit just as the sun began to rise on the horizon. Mariana wore hiking boots under her dress. My dad cried when he heard her vows. I had never seen him cry, not even during the divorce. In his own vows, he said something that made us all laugh. "I found someone who sees beauty in spreadsheets and romance in routine." And we all understood. My mother, of course, was not invited. She found out through Facebook, after seeing photos where someone tagged my father. That day she called me 15 times. I didn't answer once. She left several voicemails, each more frantic than the last. "How could you not tell me anything? This is disrespectful to our family. That woman is trying to replace me. Your father planned all of this to hurt me. Please answer me. I'm completely alone." And in that last sentence, she wasn't lying. She was alone. After the FBI investigation, she became untouchable. It turned out she had accepted money from Rodolfo, only $3,000, but enough. She thought she was being clever by using an app under a fake name, but the FBI was smarter. They arrested her in the middle of her shift at the Aladane Hotel. Customers in the lobby recorded the moment, another viral episode for her record. She was lucky that Mariana, being connected to the case, recused herself to avoid any conflict of interest. The assigned prosecutor considered her too small a fish and offered her a deal: probation, fines, and cooperation against Rodolfo. She had to testify publicly, under oath, detailing the relationship, the money, the trips, the gifts, even the job promotion she obtained thanks to him. It was humiliating. Rodolfo's lawyer shredded her on the stand, portraying her as a gold digger willing to sell out her family for handbags and luxury hotel stays. The prosecutor barely defended her. To them, she was nothing more than a means to get to Rodolfo. And they did. He received 7 years in federal prison. Fiorella, meanwhile, had her baby and returned to Russia. My mother received 2 years of probation and a $10,000 fine she will never be able to pay. She lost her job at holidaying after the arrest, and no one wanted to hire someone with a federal record, even a reduced one. She ended up working in a call center, the kind that annoys you, offering extended car warranties. Barely 30 hours a week, no benefits, minimum wage, and commissions she never reaches because her voice sounds flat. She left the studio apartment she was living in and moved into a rented room in a shared house with 4 other women. The place is run by a landlady who only rents to women, a euphemism for divorced and desperate. My mother is the oldest one there. Last month, I went to see her. Not because I had forgiven her, but because I needed to see the final result of her choices. In barely a year and a half, she looked like she'd aged a decade. Her roots were gray because she could no longer afford the salon, her nails were broken and unpainted. She wore a cheap Walmart sweater, when I remember that 3 years ago she donated clothes to Goodwill because she considered them tacky. Her room was depressing, a single bed, an old vanity bought on Facebook Marketplace, and a nearly unusable laptop. On the vanity there was only one photo, her and my father on their wedding day, young, hopeful, in love. Before she decided that wasn't enough. "Why do you keep that?" I asked. She stared at it for a long time, as if trying to remember who she had been. "I chose wrong," she admitted. It was the closest thing to accountability. No apologies, no justifications, just minimal acceptance. We talked for about an hour. She told me about the call center, about how she uses a fake name so she can't be tracked online, about how her coworkers criticize her for being the oldest, about how she follows my father's life on social media as if it were a series about everything she lost. She even mentioned she'd seen photos of the wedding. "Mariana looked beautiful," she said. "And your father? He looked happy." "He is. Happier than he ever was with you," I replied, without softening it. She didn't deserve tenderness. I thought I was improving my life. You thought wrong. When I left, she hugged me. It felt like hugging a ghost, bones and regret. She smelled of cheap perfume and defeat. "Will you visit me again?" she asked. "No." "Will you tell your father I'm sorry?" "He doesn't care. He doesn't even think about you." That destroyed her, because it was true. To him, she no longer meant anything. Not even anger. Meanwhile, my father's life is exactly what she thought she would achieve with Rodolfo. With Mariana, he travels for real, not on those fraudulent money laundering trips. They bought a modern bright house where my father runs his consulting firm, which now employs 3 more forensic accountants. Mariana became a partner in his firm specializing in financial crimes. They are a solid couple, with no need to show off on social media. They plan to have a child. My father, at 52, is excited. He says he wants to do it right this time, with someone who understands that love is a verb, not a feeling. Last week I had dinner at their house. Mariana cooked, she's taking classes and says it relaxes her. We talked about my architecture internship, their upcoming trip to Japan, about everything, except Claudia. For them, she doesn't exist. Before I left, my father told me, "I want you to know something. I don't hate your mother. I simply feel nothing for her. And that isn't cruelty, it's freedom. I'm free." He was right. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And Claudia earned every gram of that indifference. On my way home, she wrote to me again. "Did you have dinner with them?" I didn't reply. She insisted. I just wanted more. I answered, "You already had everything. You wanted something different. You got it. Now live with it." She tried to call me. I blocked her. That's how it all ends. Not with revenge or a final confrontation, but with Claudia alone, in a rented room, scrolling through social media to watch the life she traded for a mirage. Meanwhile, my father is building something real with someone who understands that stability isn't boring. It's the foundation of everything that truly matters. My mother believed she was the protagonist of a story about finding herself. In reality, she was nothing more than a living warning of what happens when you destroy what you have while chasing what you think you want. Numbers don't lie. Her, 0 marriage, 0 career, 0 family, 0 friends. My father, everything she thought she could get, multiplied, and shared with someone who actually deserved it. She sought passion and found only consequences. She chased excitement and ended up exhausted. She wanted more, and ended with nothing. The exchange was final. No returns, no refunds, no second chances. In the end, all that remained was a 45-year-old woman in a rented room, learning too late that when you treat people like stepping stones, there comes a moment when there's nowhere left to step. Let me clarify something, because many people ask me. Yes, I'm in therapy. I started 6 months ago, when I realized I was obsessively checking my mother's social media, as if watching her downfall were a spectacle. My therapist helped me understand that what I called anger was actually grief. Grief for the mother I thought I had. Grief for the family that broke the day she made that choice. I'm trying to forgive her, not for her sake, but for mine. She'll never know whether I succeed or not, and that no longer matters. Carrying so much resentment is exhausting. And I learned something important. Forgiving does not mean reconciling. There are bridges that, once burned, light the way forward with their own ashes. My dad knows how hard it's been for me to process all this. He's the one who offered to pay for my therapy sessions. He told me what mattered was healing properly, not allowing my mother's decisions to define my ability to trust someone else. He also reminded me that not everyone trades gold for trinkets. As always, he was right. The man my mother used to call boring, predictable, and emotionally empty has shown more emotional intelligence than she did in her entire life. I'm dating someone now. Her name is Lucia. She studies with me and wants to dedicate herself to sustainable housing design. Sometimes she jokes that my family story sounds like a Netflix drama, just sadder. She met my dad and Mariana last month. Dad grilled meat, Mariana dominated at Scrabble, and Lucia fit in as if she had always been there. No one mentioned Claudia, as if she were a deceased relative no one talks about anymore. Not because it hurts, but because it simply stopped mattering. Once, Lucia asked me if I was afraid of ending up like my parents. I told her I would never fear becoming like my father, a stable, successful man building something real with someone who values him. What does scare me is ending up like my mother, so convinced the grass is greener elsewhere that she destroyed her own garden. Your mom wanted a movie-style romance, Lucia told me, but your dad built a real life. And she never understood that. Last week, my mother sent a letter to my dad's office. His assistant threw it away, unopened. When she mentioned it to him, he just replied, "Who?" and went back to his spreadsheet. That's the place Claudia occupies now, somewhere between a who and silence. A living ghost who only torments herself. Of course, she eventually found this story. It was inevitable. She constantly Googled herself, trying to confirm that she still existed somewhere. She wrote to me from an unknown number. "How can you write this about your own mother?" I replied by sending her the link to the video where she slaps Rodolfo at the gala. "You wrote it yourself. I just preserved the evidence." She tried calling me several times. I didn't block the number. I simply let it ring. Blocking someone means they still matter enough for you to shut the door. Not answering means accepting that they no longer mean anything. Dad was always right. Indifference is freedom. I'm learning to practice it. And it feels liberating, like dropping a weight I didn't even know I was carrying. The woman who believed she deserved everything ended up with less than she had, less than she wanted, less than nothing. Somewhere in a shared house, in a small room with a broken computer and a call center headset, Claudia faced the truth. She was the author of her own tragedy. She was not a victim of a routine marriage, nor of circumstances, nor of a midlife crisis. She was the architect of her own demolition. In the end, the accounts balanced. Credits and debits. choices and consequences. As my dad says, the math worked out perfectly. 6 months later, an unexpected turn. I didn't plan to update again, but this deserves it. Claudia died 2 weeks ago. There was nothing dramatic or poetic about it. A heart attack at her call center desk. She was stressed and alone. Her supervisor found her slumped over the keyboard, still wearing the headset, in the middle of her shift. The hospital called my dad first because he was still listed as the emergency contact. Then he called me. "Your mother passed away," he said. Simple. Direct. No embellishment. I expected to feel something, sadness, relief, anger, but there was only emptiness. The funeral was small. Her 4 housemates attended, more out of obligation than affection, 2 distant cousins, and her sister, with whom she hadn't spoken since the divorce. Dad didn't go. Mariana sent flowers with no card. The funeral director kept glancing at his watch impatiently. I gave the farewell. 5 minutes of carefully chosen truths. Just enough. Claudia always wanted more from life. And she got it, just not in the way she expected. She left lessons, though not the ones she intended to teach. Afterward, one of her housemates handed me a box with her belongings. She said, "She talked about you all the time. She said she wanted to fix things with you." Inside were family photos from before the divorce, printed screenshots of this thread, her wedding ring, she never got rid of it, and most striking of all, a letter addressed to me, dated the day before her death. I haven't opened it yet. I don't know if I ever will. Lucia thinks I should burn it. Dad thinks I should read it only when I'm ready. Mariana, with her lawyer's logic, said that keeping it closed is also a decision. Some final words don't always deserve to be heard. Dad handled the estate. There wasn't much, accumulated debts and poorly managed memories. That's how it ended. No redemption. No perfect closure. Just the truth. With her salary, she never managed to cover the federal fines. My father paid for the funeral, the cremation, and only what was strictly necessary. "This isn't about her," he told me. "It's about you having closure." We scattered her ashes at the beach she used to take me to when I was a child. Just him and me. He said a few words, without drama. "Claudia, you were the mother of my son, and at one point that meant something. Rest now. Your war with yourself is over." There were no tears. No scene. Just a sober ending, as it should have been. The call center sent her final paycheck in my father's name, since he was listed as her closest relative. It was barely $247 and some cents, for 4 days of work. He donated it to a women's shelter in her name. They replied with a thank you card addressed to Miss Claudia. She would have hated that. She always insisted on being called MS. Her Instagram is still active, frozen in time. The last post is a motivational quote about rising from the ashes. The comments had disappeared months before her death, a digital death that came before the real one. Rodolfo didn't even learn of her death until last week. From federal prison, he sent condolences through his lawyer. My father returned the letter unopened. Not even dead did Claudia manage to get his attention without legal intermediaries. In the house where she rented a room, someone else already lives there. They cleared everything out in a single day, as if she had never been there. What weighs on me most, though, is a notebook that came in the box with her belongings. It was filled with rehearsed conversations. "This is what I'll say when he takes me back. This is how I'll apologize to my son. This is how I'll justify my decisions to Mariana." It was a script written for a reconciliation that would never happen. Claudia lived trapped in a fantasy where damage could be erased, where everyone would forgive her, and my father would one day wake up wanting her back. The most painful entry said, "Hernan loved me for 17 years. I only loved myself for 6 months. Now no one loves anyone." She died fully understanding what she had lost. That can be seen as justice or as tragedy, depending on who's looking. The final irony came immediately. My father and Mariana found out they were expecting a child the day after the funeral. They didn't plan it that way, but life has a cruel sense of humor. One cycle closed as another opened. The baby will be named Alejandro, after my father's grandfather. A solid, classic name, without frills. Perfect, my mom would have said. My dad only added, "You're going to have a brother at 21. That child will grow up with parents who truly chose each other and who will keep choosing each other every day. Stable, boring, and predictable. For him, Claudia will be nothing more than a footnote. Your brother had another mother who is no longer here. That's how she'll remain outside the future, remembered only in stories that grow shorter and more diffuse over time." The final balance was done. All accounts closed. All debts settled. Claudia wanted to be remembered. And she is, but as a warning. When someone tells me they're bored in their relationship, when they confuse stability with monotony or think the grass is greener somewhere else, I tell her story. Not out of cruelty but for clarity. She wanted to have everything. She ended up with nothing. And now she is only absence. As my father would say, the math is complete. Rest in whatever little peace you may find, Claudia. You were my mother, then my lesson. Finally, just a story. And unlike spreadsheets, stories can lie. This one doesn't need to. The truth was always enough. Comments are closed. There's nothing left to say. Mom is gone. Dad is happy. And I am healing. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply living well. And sometimes, the worst punishment is getting exactly what you thought you wanted. To anyone reading this who is considering cheating, leaving, or looking for something better, look at your partner tonight. Look at that stable, boring, predictable love they offer you. And ask yourself if you really want to end up like Claudia, alone, collapsed over a call center desk, with an emergency contact who doesn't answer, and a child narrating your mistakes on Reddit. The numbers don't lie. Neither does this story. If this story made you think, don't ignore it. Share it, leave your opinion, and remember that sometimes living well is the most powerful answer.